Hey, everybody. Welcome to Commercial Construction, Elevate the Industry podcast, hosted by yours truly, Dave Persita. Thanks for joining us today. The reason for the podcast is to help you on your journey through commercial construction, the industry itself. We're going to do that two ways. You're going to hear from me. I've been doing this now for over 40 years. You're going to hear about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and hopefully you'll be able to learn from the things I've done right and wrong to help you move forward in the business. And you're going to hear from industry leaders, people who continue to shape the industry even today. We're fortunate to have a true industry leader, Todd Dewalt. He's an executive business coach and host of the Construction Leading Edge podcast. Welcome, Todd.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it.
So I got to say this, I look at your LinkedIn page and you come right out with it. You don't mince any words. And I quote, "I help construction owners eliminate chaos and maximize profits," end quote. So let me put you on the spot right off the bat. What qualifies you to be able to say that?
Probably 20 plus years of creating chaos and solving it. So I'm not a marketing guy. I'm not a software guy. I've spent my career as a project manager, an owner's rep, owned my own business for a while. I think that the definition I heard of an expert is somebody who's made all of the mistakes that can be made. So if that is the definition of an expert, then that's me, because I've made a lot of mistakes managing projects from bathroom remodels up to high rises. And probably there was a 3-year stint where I really cut my teeth on eliminating chaos. A gentleman brought me in to run his company so he could retire, and it was a disaster. I mean, it was a disaster. I half jokingly said that you could put a room full of monkeys with typewriters and they could come up with better processes than this company had. It was chaos. And I couldn't get away from it because it was right after the recession, so I had to fix it. So short version was I spent 3 years putting systems in place, eliminating chaos, figured out how to get to the root cause of problems. And long story short, after 3 years, the company had grown from about 15 employees up to 50 employees. Revenue grew from 3 or 4 million up to 11 million. Chaos was like 25% of what it was before. And that's when I started the podcast. But you know what? I figured some stuff out. Maybe there are some other people that could use this. And it turns out there are a few.
Well, I know I'm one of them because I've been in the construction business from the commercial side for a long time. And it seems like a lot of companies that I've been involved with, even as a consultant, it's like crisis management 101. And it's a reactive kind of model instead of a proactive model. So what you say, what I'm hearing from you is that you've learned through the process. It's like you were in it, you realized there was a need for it, and now, through your podcast that you've developed a business around it. So how long have you been in business now?
I started working with contractors part-time. Well, I started my podcast, I guess, in 2014. And that's when I gradually started working with construction business owners. And I've been doing it full-time since the middle of 2018.
So when did you start the Construction Leading Edge podcast? Because that seems like the marketing tool that drives that allows people to know what you do and how you can help them, but it drives business to you. When did you start that?
That was March 2014.
And tell me about it, because I'm a new podcaster. I mean, it's exciting, it's great, and you can hit a really targeted audience. But what led you to podcasting?
I was listening to a lot of podcasts at the time, commuting about an hour each way, running this company, the room full of monkeys with typewriters company, and was just really frustrated with the chaos and frustrated with the lack of leadership. And I thought, man, we got to do better. So I was listening to a lot of podcasts and I thought, I can either bitch and complain about it or I can do something about it. So I like podcasts. what if I interviewed people? I was listening to podcasts like the Dave Ramsey Entree Leadership Podcast. So I thought somebody should create a podcast like that for construction. So knowing what little I did, I started calling people that I knew, people I was connected with on LinkedIn, and said, hey, would you like to be interviewed on my podcast? And for some reason they said yes. And my first interview was with a guy named Torrey Hawkins, who I connected with on LinkedIn or found an article. He started a commercial construction company in Houston in 2008, which I thought was kind of crazy. And he told his story about burning the ships and taking away Plan B. And that was so much fun. I just kept contacting people, and here we are 187 or 188 episodes later. And I haven't run out of people to talk to yet.
Well, it's interesting because I was number 186, which I really appreciate. That was a lot of fun. But I love the way your website is set up. Without, even in scheduling a podcast, it's all automated. So I imagine now you have a lot of people contacting you, which is a good spot to be in. But you look at the audience that you have. There's a certain amount of people, that probably the majority of people are going to listen, that are going to be better off afterward than before because of the content. But there's going to be a certain amount of people that come to you for help, right? So describe your typical client, if you will.
Mm-hmm. The people I work with are the typical contractor I work with. They're construction business owners. They own a small company, less than 20 employees typically, and they are busy and they have outgrown their systems. And there's chaos. They are working too many hours. They realize they're the bottleneck. They realize everything's in their head, and they can't grow or can't even eliminate the chaos in their business until they get some systems in place. And they know it. They know there's a better way. They can see it, but they just can't seem to get there for some reason. So those are typically the people that I work with.
And it's like a one-on-one, pretty much. I know I've seen your programs, but you have clients that come to you and they're trying to eliminate chaos. Do you talk to them about their work-life balance? And if so, what kind of guidance do you give them?
Yes. And this is there are 4 things that my clients want. After interviewing and coaching a couple of hundred, I actually went through all my notes and distilled it down to: they want more time, more freedom, sense of accomplishment, and more money. That's what the consistent themes are. So more time is, again, let's talk about take a systems approach. And I would ask, why don't you have time? Why are you working 12 hours a day? And I'll give you an example. There was a business owner in Ontario. He was custom home builder, kind of a one-man show, building 10 or 12 custom homes. I don't know how he kept up with it, but he was doing it all himself. And he was fielding calls and texts at all hours of the day. And he had 2 young kids at home, and he and his wife, probably his wife, was more frustrated at that situation. So we started looking at it, and one simple adjustment, he said, gave back 40% of his day. And that simple adjustment was batch communication. So instead of waiting for customers to call you, instead of waiting for your subcontractors to call you, communicate proactively. Once a week, send out an update. Schedule calls and meetings with them. Don't let them be hijackers of your time. That's how I look at emails and phone calls and texts as hijackers. They're trying to hijack my agenda to conform to their agenda. So if you can preempt that by, for example, if you want to get started, one of the best things you can do is every Monday morning, train your customers to expect an update from you at a certain time. So Monday morning, we're going to send out an update that says, this is what we did last week. This is what's coming up this week. This is what we need from you. And you will preempt so many of your problems by batching communication and being proactive. So when you do that, it's like time slows down and the whole work-life balance thing doesn't become so much of an issue because suddenly you actually have time. So that's where I would get people started.
That's great advice from an executive business coach. Let me ask you this. Do you abide by those same guidelines?
I do. I don't respond to email very well. I actually train people not to expect an immediate response from me because I don't want to play email ping pong, and I need to be able to get in the zone, just like anybody that's doing an estimate or planning or design work or whatever you're doing. If you're mapping out a process for your business, you need to be able to do deep work, and you need to be able to work for an hour without interruptions. And when you can do that, then it's amazing how productive you can be. So yeah, I'm not super responsive. I don't answer the phone. My phone's on do not disturb most of the day, so I can get my work done, and then I'll batch communication, hammer out emails at the right time of the day so I can get my work done. And then I'm done at sometimes 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
That is great advice. And I don't know what's going to come of this podcast, but I can tell you this. You're going to be hearing from a guy, his name is Dave Persita. Yes, me, about doing just that. Because if there's one thing that you just hit home, is it's being able to buy some of that time back. So, well, you got one customer out of this anyway. Guten Tag. Anyway, you'll get that in a minute. I've been in the air barrier business for 20 plus years, from when it was a single asphaltic, peel and stick, impermeable membrane to what it is today. It's a big part of the building science. The business has changed. There are several manufacturers in it, but I choose today to deal with Dorken, a German-based company. Not only are they competitively priced, their technical support is great, and mainly, I can always count them. They're there when I need them, in the field or during the bid. The biggest single differentiator between Dorken and other manufacturers is they have a simple system. An example, on a previous job, we have 5 different products to do the same thing that Dorken gives me with 2 products. So Dorken, I thank you for that. My workers thank you. My clients thank you. I would urge you to check Dorken out at their website, dorken.com. That's dorken.com. You know, I'm putting together right now a podcast on business development. Now, that is a broad subject, but one of the things I talk about is what you just said. Typically, an entrepreneur and owner will grow his business until it outgrows his ability to manage it. So you help people organize their business, I think, right? So it is a business development initiative in a sense, I would think, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have the one-on-one coaching program for people who want that sort of, they need the accountability, they want the focus, they want the one-on-one help. And then I also have some master classes that I've started doing this year it's a good way to get somebody started. So I have a what I call the Get Paid for Estimates masterclass, because most general contractors don't realize, builders, home remodelers, and say light commercial GCs, they don't realize a lot of their profit bleeds and a lot of their chaos can be traced back to the fact that they're doing estimates for free. So I realized that, so I thought I need to put together some training to solve that. And I've got another masterclass that I partnered with a software company called Co-Construct to help their builders maximize profitability. So there's a variety of different ways that I try to help people. So the podcast, masterclasses, one-on-one coaching. I've done some live events also, which are a lot of fun. COVID kind of put the kibosh on those.
For sure. You mentioned the word chaos several times now, and even in your beginning when I introduced you, I mentioned it because it's on your LinkedIn page. Describe the typical types of chaos that you see that you can help with.
Yeah, chaos would look like if you think about like smooth flow, if let's say when you're passing a semi on the interstate, right? There's a certain point when you pass that semi when things just start shaking around, and that's turbulence. And otherwise, things are flowing pretty smooth. So when you think about your project, wherever there's turbulence and things are just circling around and people are touching things twice, and specifically what chaos looks like is rework, putting work in place, tearing it out, doing it again, schedule delays, doing work for free that you should get paid for, which is what I call unsolicited charity, unhappy customers, losing people, turnover on your team, low performance, this chaos that just causes people to be frustrated, and sometimes they lose the will to even get out of bed in the morning. Those are just some examples of chaos.
Well, in one of my podcasts, Starting a Business, I talk about the why. And the why is huge, because I would say the why has to be stronger than the garbage it's going to take.
Absolutely.
You're going to have to go through to get there. But that doesn't mean it can't be simpler with organization. I'm working with companies now, small companies, $1 million, less than $1 million in revenue. I'm currently working with a company that does 60 million in revenue. You know what, Todd, there's not much difference between the chaos. It's just bigger and bigger companies. Mm-hmm. Now, you talk about sales, for example, the owners in a business, when they started it, they did the selling, they did everything. And they continue to specialize in different parts. They get a superintendent, they get an HR team, they get an IT staff as they get to 50 million and beyond. But they continue to sell the way they used to. It's unbelievable. But to me, that's the chaos I saw today before this interview. Anyway, describe what differentiates you from, there's a lot of construction podcasts out there. We talked about this before we went live. What makes yours different?
It's a good question. I'm not sure I'm the right guy to answer that, because I don't listen to anybody else's podcast. Frankly, I don't even listen to my podcast. I guess I listen to it when I'm doing it, but here's what I'm known for, and what people tell me is I'm the systems guy. So there are other people out there, other podcasts. Good friend of mine, Tom Reber, Contractor Fight podcast. He's really focused on sales, which is huge. I am focused on systems, so systematizing your business, because I am a firm believer that if you have chaos in your business, it's a symptom of a deficiency in systems. So you've got to start thinking about the chaos in your business. You got to start thinking about your business as a series of systems that work together. And if you want to make chaos go away, you have to go upstream of that chaos and fix it with systems. So, for example, I get pretty practical, and I talk about, if you want to eliminate chaos in your projects, go to one place. This is where I went to Nebraska a couple of years ago. CEO brought me in, and they were having all sorts of problems on their projects, schedule delays, and it was really affecting their bottom line. I did the same thing for a CEO, husband-wife team in Orlando. They were having a lot of chaos on their projects. And I said, let's talk about your handoff, and the handoff from the office to the field. Because if you think about chaos looks like superintendent doesn't know who the sub is, something didn't get bought out, materials not ordered, the people in the field don't have the information they need. That's chaos. But that's a system, or that's a symptom of a bad handoff. So if you go solve that handoff from the office to the field, all of these, maybe not all, but a lot of your chaos will just magically disappear. So that's the kind of stuff that I really like to talk about, is practical advice on how do you eliminate chaos specifically.
So you're an analytical guy. I can tell that. I can tell that by listening to your podcast. And it's interesting because in business development, right, you have sales and marketing, and then you have everything else that supports the sales and marketing. I always say a good job starts with a good price and a good understanding of the scope of work. But what you just said happens all too often, and all the companies I've been involved with, is some are really good at preparing for a job. Now I'm talking commercial, but I'm sure the same is residential. And the ones that don't are constantly reacting to issues and situations. So it's interesting. Let's talk about the difference between commercial and residential. Now, you have a commercial background, but most of your business is in residential. Is that correct?
That's right. Most of my experience has been in commercial. So out of 24 years, I spent maybe 3 or 4 in residential, and then the rest has been commercial. But yeah, most of the people I work with are residential.
So what is the 2-3 biggest differences that you see in managing and growing a residential versus commercial business?
The big differences, one of the biggest differences is in the sophistication level of your subcontractors. Across the board, residential subcontractors, trade partners, if you want to call them that, are less sophisticated. They don't communicate as well. They're not as technologically astute. They're not used to purchase orders, invoicing, they're less they have adopted less technology. So that's one. Number 2 is the sales process for residential is completely different than commercial, because although I believe that most people make buying decisions based on emotion, the emotion is much more important for residential customers, because you really, if you want them to take action, they got to feel it. And you really need to talk the language of decision, which is the emotional part. And the flip side of that is you got to be willing and prepared to be sitting at a kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon with a crying customer who's just emotionally distraught, crying about the dust on her windows, which never happened to me in commercial, but did happen to me in residential. So it's completely different level of sophistication with the customer as well. So they are almost completely different animals, quite frankly. It may look like you're putting sticks and bricks together, but sales process, working with subcontractors, there's a lot of big differences.
So you had to adjust to that, and it's almost like you're not dumbing down, but you're managing a different type of client, right, than you were yourself. In commercial, you're still putting sticks and bricks together. That doesn't change, but like you said, just pre-qualifying for jobs, the size of the job, the duration, the pay cycle, all those things. So what do you do, Todd, when somebody comes to you who's doing well in residential and say, hey, I want to delve into the commercial business?
First thing I would do is say, why?
There's that word.
Yeah, like you said, I completely agree. You better be really clear on why you want to do that. And there needs to be a pretty compelling reason, because otherwise it could be a shiny object. You're going to get frustrated, but there better be a compelling reason why. And that's where I would start, is make sure that they really understand why they want to do it.
So Todd, though, your service is really, it could be either residential or commercial, right? I mean, you can just define what this person needs and you can give it to them. Do you find that happens much? Do you have people who want to get into commercial? I know you have a podcast or 2 on getting into the commercial space. Do you have much of that happening right now?
What I find, well, let's see, that's a good question. I don't really know. I haven't had a lot of people call me and say, I want to get into commercial. I do have people that I talk to regularly who say, hey, I'm thinking about starting a business. And here's a piece of advice. This is actually some of my advice for somebody who wants to start a business, is to, number 1, understand why you want to do it. But then number 2, take a step back and realize there are two approaches to starting a business. One is what I call the guy with a hammer in search of a nail. And this is the guy who has operated cranes for the last 20 years and he's thinking about starting a business. So what kind of business do you think he's going to start?
You better be operating a crane.
So he's thinking about going $500,000 in debt to start a crane rental business. The Finnish carpenter who does remodeling right now, and he wants to start a remodeling business, or whatever they are, they tend to have a hammer in their hand of this thing that they're used to doing. So that's where they tend to go. My advice is, let's put the hammer down and let's stop looking for a specific nail to drive and go ask people that you want to work with. Start with, who do you want to work with? Who are the types of people you want to work with? Are they business owners? Are they homeowners? Who are your ideal clients? And then let's find out what kind of problems they have. And let's be a guy or a gal who has a toolbox of different things we can do and go solve that problem. So if you're in Boise, Idaho right now, you may be a commercial superintendent thinking, I want to get into commercial, but the multifamily housing industry is just exploding there. Go talk to those multifamily developers and general contractors and say, what kind of problems are you having? And they may tell you, I'm having trouble with this. I can't find this. If you can do this, I'll send you all the work you can handle. That's a lot easier business development strategy than going around looking for people that have a specific nail that you can drive. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to give myself a shameless plug here, but in my podcast number 4, I know you're on like 190 or something. I talk about exactly that. And I focus on the construction person, a staff member, an estimator, or somebody in sales. And I say the same thing. It's not a startup, right? A startup is this is starting a new business, something that people are already doing, something your current employer is doing. But you may differentiate yourself by doing less, but doing it better, less overhead, more, there's a lot of reasons, but in the same space that you understand. What you just described is, let's go and identify the need and fill it, right? Instead of trying to figure it out and then, go looking for customers. So that's really, really good advice. Mark Twain once said, and I'm serious, it's the clothes that make the man. Naked people have little or no influence on society. The wardrobe was provided by Benchmark Clothiers, custom clothes to fit your lifestyle. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram at Benchmark Clothiers. And when you go there, tell them Dave sent you. Now, going back beforehand, I think because residential construction is still booming, that you, in your role, probably won't see a whole lot of people looking for something else to do. But I think that you and I both will see people scrambling, if maybe that's the wrong word, people looking for other opportunity if their current opportunity starts to shrink a little bit or they sense that. It's very few and far between you're going to find somebody who just wants to grow because they want to grow. Mm-hmm. They're there, for sure. The podcast, how has your podcast evolved? And I want to know because it's interesting to me. You started it a few years ago. You've done a ton of episodes. If you had to describe your podcast today versus when you started, and I listened to your first one. I did. Oh, wow. No, I did. It was fine. How has it changed?
Hopefully I've gotten better at asking questions. Hopefully I talk a little faster. I'm from Kentucky, so I don't talk super fast. How has it changed? I really don't know, Dave. I think when I first got started, I thought, how am I going to keep finding this stream of people to talk to? I'm going to run out of people who want to get on this podcast. I'm going to run out of things to talk about. But the more people I talk to, the more, for example, I've spent a lot of time with home builders and remodelers, really busy home builders and remodelers. And the more of them I talk to, the more of their problems I start to see and hear, and I start talking about that. So I think, to answer your question, I've gotten more, it started out as an interview format, but after learning about all of these problems and getting to the root causes, it's evolved into, okay, these are the problems. I'm going to give you some hacks. I'm going to tell you, you're not the only one dealing with this. There are hundreds of other people dealing with this. These are some trends that you need to watch out for. And then here's how you solve it. So it's evolved to be more practical. Here's the problem, do this to solve it.
And I would agree, because if you didn't have an answer, here was my answer. Yes, it's gotten more professional, although it was good in the beginning. I think you know more about what you have, what you offer, and what people need today than you did then, and that's normal. And you're filling that hole. You're doing it well. You're also providing, guidance to people like me, others in the business of podcasting, on how it should be done and how important the content is. And I think I speak for a lot of people when I say thank you for that. You're one of the leading podcasters going on. But let's get back to your business. One of the things, if I came to you as a client and said, "Hey, Todd, look, man, I need to focus and I need to be able to scale up what I do." Okay, because right now it's me, and I'm not saying this if I was a guy, it's me, and it's only my ability to grow my business is totally dependent on my time. How do you guide somebody and tell them, look, if you want to grow, you're going to have to do this, this, and this, or you're going to have to invest, or just, don't worry about moving on, do what you do well. What would your guidance be?
The first thing I would do is tell them they're the problem.
You tell me I'm the problem. I'm just kidding.
I would say if you're a business owner, whatever problems you're dealing with, they're probably because of you. You are the lid on your organization. And I would want to find out where their head was, where their mindset was, because until they are open to the idea that a couple of ideas. One, that they are the problem. Two, that they can change, that it's actually possible for them to change. If they can't come to those realizations, then we're just wasting our time, because they're going to play the blame game, and they're going to think it's everybody else's fault, or they're going to think the universe is out to get them. But if they can start to realize, I'm the issue here, I'm the common trend among all of my problems, and that's bad news because that hurts a little bit. But it's also good news, because if there's one person you can control, it's you. And that's where I would start. And I will offend people a little bit on purpose, just to see where they're at, because I've worked with some people very briefly and who weren't open to that, and they thought everybody else was the problem, or they were looking for silver bullets. There are no silver bullets. And it really starts with the mindset. That surprises some people. They come to me and they think, my cash flow is not right. I've got all these issues. My people aren't taking ownership. My clients are a pain. And I'll start talking about, let's talk about your mindset. And that's really where it's at.
Well, you're going to find out quickly if they're thin-skinned, and if they really want to be helped, right? If they really want to change. That's a quick way to do it. I got a producer that offends me every once in a while, but it's all good. Todd, looking ahead, where do you see you and your business in, let's say, 3 years? Do you have an image of what you want to be, where you want it to be, that you want to share with us?
My goal, like what winning looks like to me, this is something I teach my clients, that everybody needs to know, what does winning look like? If you have employees, your employees want to know, what does winning look like? If you're a business owner, you need to know, what does winning look like for you? So the things that are literally printed on my wall, what winning looks like for me is, I want to build community. I want to grow leaders, and want to have fun doing it. So, and solve big, painful problems for people. What that looks like 3 years from now, and I don't know. But if I'm doing those things, working with cool people, having good conversations, growing leaders, building communities, solving big problems, then I'll be pretty happy.
I think that's great. And it's, I knew you would be able to answer it because people like you understand that you need to kind of begin with the end in mind, if you will. Everything you do today is going towards something and not just, a rudderless ship. Obviously, you have that all together, and that's cool. Now, you have a podcast, so I'd like you to tell our listeners about where they can find you. Give us all that stuff.
Absolutely. It's the Construction Leading Edge podcast, and it's available on probably every podcast player out there: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, a bunch that I can't even name. So if you just look for Construction Leading Edge podcast, you'll find it. My website is constructionleadingedge.com. And I actually set up another website earlier this year with some specific things for specific resources for builders and remodelers and general contractors, buildermasterclass.com. So if you're looking for some videos on how to eliminate change order chaos, how to prevent communication chaos, how to get paid for estimates, which that's a drum I'm beating every chance I get right now because I just believe it's such a big problem. A lot of resources like that are available over at buildermasterclass.com. So
I say this in all sincerity. I really do enjoy your podcast. I've been through all your stuff. I was even on the call last week when you talked about getting paid for estimates, even though it's not part of what I do. I wanted to hear you and get the feedback, and it was really good. So everybody who's listening, I would urge you strongly to join Todd, listen to his podcasts. And for those of you in residential construction, for sure, you have a tremendous resource in Todd. And it's almost like it could be one-on-one. So it's your decision to get a hold of Todd and to take whatever you can from him. It'll be mutually beneficial. Todd, I can't thank you enough. I'm looking forward to getting to know you even better. I'm going to continue to listen to your podcasts. And I look forward to the day when we can collaborate on issues. For example, commercial construction issues. I am not a systems guy, right? But I understand the value of systems. And if people come to me about that, I am not the right guy, but I will point them in the right direction. I'm more of a business development, sales, marketing person. That's my strength, and that's what I focus on. But for us to be able to collaborate in the future on with people, with companies, I think that is a real service. And I'll go one more. You said that you wanted to have fun with it. I always say this: as long as I can, people say, why are you podcasting? Well, as long as I continue to add value and enjoy it, I'm going to keep on doing it. So again, thank you so much for your time. And for you all that are listening, I want you to stay safe and stay tuned. Elevate, 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 elevate. All the music for the episodes, including our theme song Elevate, was provided by DMV producer Trey Skills. If you like what you heard, follow Trey Skills on Instagram at Trey Skills, TreySkillz. That's TreySkillz. So follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Elevate Industry. Check out my YouTube channel at Commercial Construction, Elevate the Industry. Visit my website, adicorp.com, adicorp.com. Go to LinkedIn, search for David Persita, hit connect, and follow me. Please rate, review, and comment on this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next week.